The Man Who Refused to Stay Down. In a quiet little town called Riverside, surrounded by dry hills and old farms, there lived a man named Tom Walker. Tom wasn't rich. He didn't have fancy clothes, a college degree, or a big house. He had calloused hands, tired eyes, and a dream that most people laughed at. Tom worked at a construction site, pouring cement, carrying bricks, fixing walls. His pay barely covered rent and food, but he never complained. He always said, "Hard work doesn't scare me. Giving up does." Every morning before sunrise, while the world still slept, Tom would walk 5 miles to work. His boots were worn, his jacket torn, but his heart was full of something strong, belief. Tom's dream was simple but powerful. He wanted to build his own construction company, one that would hire local people, pay them fairly, and teach young men to work with pride. But in a small town like Riverside, dreams like that sounded like jokes. You? Start a company? You can't even afford a new truck. Dreams don't pay bills, Tom. He heard those words every day, from people at work, from friends at the bar, even from his own brother. But Tom never argued. He just smiled and said, "We'll see." At night, after long hours of lifting bricks and mixing concrete, he went home, washed his hands, and studied. He borrowed books about business, watched free videos on his old phone, and took notes until midnight. He was exhausted, body broken, hands blistered, but he kept learning. Every night, when sleep tried to pull him down, he whispered, "You can rest when the dream's built." One winter, work slowed down. The company he worked for cut half the workers. Tom was one of them. He came home with his last paycheck, not even enough to pay rent. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty plate in front of him. His mother's photo hung on the wall. She had always said, "Tom, you're not meant to be ordinary." He wanted to believe her, but that night he broke down. He dropped his head into his hands and cried, quietly, like a man who had tried too hard for too long. Then, on the 4th morning, he looked in the mirror and said, "No one's coming to save you. If you want something, build it yourself." He took his last $200, bought used tools, and started Tom's Repairs, a one-man business. The first few months were brutal. No one trusted him. He went door to door asking if people needed fences fixed or roofs patched. Most said no. He carried his toolbox everywhere, sometimes working 12 hours a day for just a few dollars, but he never complained. One afternoon, an old woman named Mrs. Carter asked him to fix her porch. He did the job perfectly, every nail, every board, every detail. When she saw his work, she smiled and said, "You work like it's your own house." She told her neighbors. Her neighbors told others. Slowly, word spread. If you want honest work, call Tom Walker. Soon, his small jobs became big ones. He hired 1 helper, then 2. He didn't have fancy trucks, but he had something stronger: trust. Just when things were going well, disaster struck. A heavy storm hit Riverside, tearing down roofs, flooding houses, destroying power lines. Tom's small workshop was ruined. Tools gone, supplies destroyed. Friends said, "It's over, Tom. Just quit. You did your best." But Tom shook his head and said, "If I stop now, I'll lose more than tools. I'll lose myself." He borrowed an old shed, rebuilt his tools from scraps, and started again. He started over, again, and this time he worked harder than ever. Months passed. Spring returned. People needed homes repaired after the storm. Tom worked from sunrise to sunset. He didn't rest much, but little by little the money came in. He saved every dollar, reinvested, and finally bought a second-hand truck. By the end of the year, Tom's repairs became Walker Construction and Company. He had 10 workers, all local men who once struggled like he did. Every Friday when he paid them, he said, "Remember, boys, we don't quit when it's hard. We push harder." One morning, a local business owner came to him and said, "Tom, we're building a new community center. We want your company to handle the job." Tom couldn't believe it, the biggest project in Riverside, and they chose him. He worked day and night, oversaw every detail. When the building was finished, the mayor shook his hand and said, "This center stands because one man refused to stop working." The crowd cheered. Tom looked up at the sky and whispered, "We made it, Mom." Years later, Tom's company grew beyond Riverside. He built homes, schools, and offices across Colorado. But he never forgot where he came from. He still woke up before sunrise, still worked beside his men. When young workers complained that life was too hard, Tom told them, "Hard is what makes you stronger." Easy never built anything worth keeping. He told them his story, not to brag, but to remind them that dreams don't belong to the lucky. They belong to the stubborn, the ones who show up even when they're tired, broke, and alone. So listen to me. You might not have money. You might not have support. You might feel like the world doesn't care about your dream. But remember Tom Walker from Riverside. He started with nothing. No degree, no fortune, no perfect plan. Just hands that worked and a heart that refused to quit. Hard work is not glamorous. It's sweat, pain, and nights that break you. But if you stay with it, if you give everything you've got, one day the world will call you lucky. And you'll smile because you'll know the truth. Luck didn't build it. You did. You don't have to be rich to rise. You just have to refuse to stay down. Every time life knocks you over, stand up again, stronger, tougher, wiser. Because in the end, success doesn't belong to those who never fall. It belongs to those who never stay down.